Laundry.
I never thought that you would be no, this is
I did. Good morning, meat suits. Welcome back to Read It and Weep, Season 5. This is a podcast about movies and friendship, and this season we're doing Kevin Bacon's Exquisite Corpse, a year-long movie-watching game, and we're just four conjoined quadruplets who are going to die together.
hell yeah.
What an exciting thing. Well, within a few days of each other, at least. I'm your host, Alex Falcone, recording, as always, from North Koreatown in Los Angeles. I'm joined by my co-host in Southeast Portland. He's at Anthony Lopez Part 2 on Twitter. If there was a beauty contest for the insides of bodies, he would win. It's Anthony Lopez.
I love this movie. There's not a lot in it I could really relate to on a personal level. But I have to say,
You do like Italian furniture.
I do like Italian furniture. I like my house to look like an aquarium. But when Jeremy Irons is high as fuck and he screams, "I want ice cream!" I felt that, you know?
Man, that was probably the least I related to the movie,
times.
was when he had orange soda and cake and was like, I feel like ice cream would fix this. That felt like too sweet, too much.
No, that's the thing is you haven't been high enough. That's the problem,
Well, that
Alex.
is true. That is true.
To get that high.
I
like the cake. I like the no knife cake splitting. Where
Cake,
you
just
yeah.
cake hands. Yeah. I do like cake
Yeah.
hands for sure.
Eat
That
it right out of your
brilliant,
hand.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Also joining us today is the co-host of the Old Gamers Almanac podcast from the woods of Brooklyn. There's something wrong with him, and I could put a label on it, but like subtly, sometimes like I think I like him very much, and sometimes he's just an amusing way and not much more. It's Hunter Donaldson.
Yeah, that's me. I'm actually twins. And the last week was my evil twin was on.
Right. The one who
and
did
that's why.
the segment. That was a different
Yeah, that's
guy.
why my energy was like that. My evil twin was here. That's what it was. This is
think
the good
anyone
twin. I
who,
love
like,
you.
saw Dead Ringers was like just very unimpressed by the Prestige.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was
Yeah,
like,
I think you would have definitely gotten a hint about the Prestige if you'd watched this in a few years of it, for sure. I mean, I don't know that I would enjoy the game of pretending to switch places with my twin. Like, that seems like every conversation you'd have would be like, wait, what did I say yesterday? Like, that just sounds so stressful.
briefings. That's what would be so boring. It's just explaining
that's-
every little dumb thing you said to everybody. It's so annoying.
I feel like I have that already because, like Alex, like you, I'm not great with faces sometimes or names. And so I'm like, I'm just going to assume that I know this person and just say vague things until they get enough context clues.
But
Yeah,
I mean,
if
the
you're just
reason
already always playing that game. Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
the reason you wouldn't enjoy that is because you're a whole full person. You're not a fucked up little set of twins.
Well, that's
I mean,
true.
This movie, again, I really like this movie, but I love that this movie in the opening scene asked the question, what if there was two little freaks? And then it follows through on that for the next 2 hours. Just what if
But you,
two
the
fucking
Prestige too.
weirdos?
Like, the Prestige I relate to more because I'm like, all right, let's ruin our own lives for one magic trick. But even then, they're like,
get that.
yeah, I get that. But the idea of like constantly having to be like, when she's like, remember last night you said that thing to me? No, baby, I forgot. Remind me. Like, it just sounds so stressful to be constantly like, I feel this way about tapas, but whatever I said yesterday about tapas, I also believe. Anyway, I can't handle it. I'm not big on lying. It's very stressful for me. Also joining us to round out the panel, he's in Northern California, and he's been around a bit. So he's seen some creepy things in the movie industry, but this show is the most disgusting thing that's ever happened to him. It's Ezra Fox.
Apparently I'm a mutant also.
You're the weirdest X-Man. You're the X-Man with 3 cervixes.
Yeah. What a superpower.
It'll come in handy at some point.
That makes me hot, Ezra. Keep talking about your 3 cervixes.
3 cervixes.
Hey, who wants to guess if this is my type of movie?
Well, at least you're not alone.
I mean, hey, come on. This is more your type of movie than you were expected it to be. You
That's
gotta
actually-
give me that.
That is true. I was
Yeah.
expecting worse than I got. So here's what's weird. I actually enjoyed a good chunk of the first part of it, I feel like. And then
The part where it was
less
awkward, there was a sitcom premise played seriously. I like that part too. we're going to talk about the movie in a second, but I will just give you a little preview, Ezra. Of all the things that are not for me, this is the most not for me.
Oh, you mean you're looking forward to Endgame?
Yeah, Endgame, Avengers
for Endgame. I mean, no, because I've seen Endgame. Like, just at least this was a different movie. I hadn't seen this movie before, so that helped. But oof, boy, this was not for me. Okay, before we get into that, though, we got a few things we got to do, and we're going to keep it brisk, which includes, as usual, probably talking shit on the news segment. But first, I want to start the show by thanking all of our fabulous meat buddies, especially for our new fabulous meat buddy, the most fabulous Steve, who just signed up. More about Steve in a future episode. If you want to join Steve and be fabulous and keep the show limping down the tracks, you can go to Metreon.com. And we really appreciate everybody who supports the show. Also, I want to take a quick second in what feels kind of like an advertising break to let you know, if you're watching on YouTube right now, you'd notice Ez has a different backdrop. So these are just all the mysteries that are available to you if you watch us, available on youtube.com/Alex Falcone, where we are continuing to put new episodes until one of them magically doesn't work. But so far, they've all worked.
So if you're a listener, though, just a podcast, I need you to go into your mind palace and update Ezra's background manually.
Yeah.
All right?
Right.
It's not the same mind palace background you've already had. I know you imagine him in like a big, nice kind of like
by the jacuzzi.
It's a lot of crushed velvet paintings, but you need to update your background.
Now, picture him in a French ski chalet.
Yeah, so everyone's in your mind palace, right-click on settings, and then
you might have to update your drivers depending on whether or not you have thought of Ezra's backdrop recently. All right. Speaking of which, actually, I do want to do. So it's time for segment 1, the news. And I know, Hunter, you don't like when it's personal news, but sometimes it is. That's part of the news segment.
This time the news.
The news. This time is personal.
Well, 2 bits of news today that I want to talk about that are not about the greater film industry at large, but about the smaller read it and weep industry at small. But the first is that I had this idea for a little YouTube series on the show a few weeks ago. You may have experienced it live while we were watching, or a few months ago now, while we were watching Soylent Green. But I put out my first episode of my new YouTube series, We Live in the Future.
Oh, cool.
So, you did it.
My little mini-series about movies from the past that are set in the current year, and then I watch it and decide how well they did. So for my first episode, I watched the 1994 film No Escape, which, have any of you guys seen No Escape?
No.
I have not.
It is... It's mostly like pretty wild about the future. We don't take monorails to get to jail. But the one thing that they really do nail is the private prison industry taking over everything. They're really good at that.
Yeah, that must have been hard to predict in the 90s. Didn't see that writing on the wall.
This was 94, and the crime bill was also 94, which means this was in production before the thing that caused the thing the movie's about. So, I mean, you didn't have to... I mean, I wasn't around much. I was really drunk in the early 90s, so I don't remember much. But the... I'm sure you could have predicted this, but it's still impressive. It's still before it all was.
You don't go broke in America betting against justice, right? So if you're saying like, hey, we think it's probably gonna be more unfair in the future, that's probably not a bad call.
That is a good bet for sure. Yeah.
Well, doesn't it also kind of feel like the last 10 years in particular, the people in power are kind of like speed running the end of the world? Like they feel like they're a little bit like the people in power kind of slow played it for like 6,000 years, and then the last 10 years they're like, boys, I'm tired, let's wrap this up, let's call it in.
I want it to happen in my lifetime. I don't want to wait for future generations. I want to feel it.
Get in.
I want to stand on a mountain of skulls.
It's like that thing before the end of the world and just not know how it ends.
Yeah. Well, so have you ever seen like a show, that like had a 22 episode order, and then they found out they got canceled, and they had to wrap it up in 2 more, right? To just get under the wire. It does feel like they're burning through plot.
Yeah, we're being dollhoused.
Yes,
we're being Dollhouse season 2 is what you're saying.
Exactly that.
I also feel like if you're saying you wouldn't go broke betting against justice, I do feel like maybe justice is point shaving. Like it feels like somebody is cheating a little bit on that.
Oh, so maybe justice is not actually blind, but just throwing the game?
Yeah, exactly. Justice isn't blind, but is like in cahoots with a justice bookmaker.
Oh.
I just watched the Netflix series about cheating at sports, so I have been thinking about point shaving recently. Anyway, so No Escape, you guys. I do not recommend it, although it does have Ernie Hudson and a couple other people who are really fun, and it does have this really fun, like the lead villain on the prison island is very funny, and he has his best line in the movie is he like kills all of his lieutenants, and he's like has a big meeting of all the people. He's like, I just want you to know the reason why I killed all of them is I really like being in charge.
That's
Makes
very
sense.
honest.
I was like, what? That's a solid argument. I think that is why you did that. But yeah, also I do think by 1994, maybe you could predict prisons, but you also should have known that monorails are not the future by 1994. It feels like a miss.
I think so.
I mean, I feel like monorails were like VR, where it's just I was just waiting for their time to like come. Basically, it went a couple of times. It was like, oh, is it monorail time yet? And then no, not yet.
Still not really.
Maybe now.
2022 will be the monorail year.
Yeah, it's coming.
Well, that's the thing is, monorails had a real big future. Then Conan O'Brien wrote that one episode of The Simpsons, and no one ever trusted monorails again.
Did
Just
you call them
destroyed it.
monos for short?
The
Did I?
Mons.
I think you were like monos had a big future, and then Conan
Uh-huh.
O'Brien.
You did
Yeah.
say that really
I like
quickly.
that.
You kind of sneaked it in there.
Anyway, so if you want to see my first episode of We Live in the Future, you can go to youtube.com/AlexFalcone. You can also find this episode. Okay, the other bit of news. This is news to you, to use. The three of you, this is an interesting thing for you. And it's related to our show. So
We're canceled. We got to wrap it up, guys.
we got 2 episodes to finish season 5. No, I think this will interest you. And I was trying to decide if I was going to tell you this or sit on it and let it be my personal advantage for the rest of season 5. But I have decided to let you know because I think it's super interesting, and I also want to tell people at home about it. There is a new tool on the internet to help us pick movies for this show.
What?
That exists because of us.
What?
So you know,
What?
so we've been using a couple of different tools. Probably, I know I have, which is I've used. IMDb has like actors in common, so you can
Yeah, the
say 2
collab
movies,
search.
and it'll tell
Yeah.
you the collab search, tell you who is common in those 2 movies, and then Oracle of Bacon, which is about Kevin Bacon, and you can put in 2 actors, and it'll tell you how far it is to get from those actors.
Yeah. How far
The
they are
problem
from
is-
each other.
The problem is with the Oracle of Bacon, we don't want actors. We want to put in movies.
Right.
So I emailed them and I said, what if we could put movies in? And they did it.
What?
What?
So because of this show, so Patrick is the owner of Oracle of Bacon, who you can learn more about on his website, piki.org, piki.org/Patrick, to learn about him. So Patrick makes the website, and he is a programmer, and he's very good. And he was like, hey, man, very commonly requested feature. So I decided to do it. It's not a separate page. You just go to Oracle of Bacon, and you have to spell the movie name correctly, exactly. So like if it has a the, you have to include the, because if you don't, the spell check program he's running is still doing actors first. So there's some other like places this needs to iterate before it'll work perfectly. But you can do it now, and it does kind of work. Ezra, you and I learned about a downside, which is it's scraping Wikipedia, not IMDb.
So it doesn't get everything.
Actors who are not mentioned in the Wikipedia page will not be there. But if you take the current movie and your movie, you can find how many steps to get there,
Wow.
according to Wikipedia, via the Oracle of Bacon for us. So thank you, Patrick. You're a genius.
That's
You're
amazing. I'm using it right now.
Isn't this neat, you guys? It's for us. It happened.
Wow. We've our cultural impact on the world, I think, is solidified thanks to Patrick.
It's going from 0 to 1. I think.
that was we've had one impact.
I think so. I mean, there's like a couple of other little things I could claim as cultural impact over the years, but definitely this is the main one, is that the Oracle of Bacon now works with movies. I was like, there has to be a way to do this because it knows the movies on the way to the other actors. It seems like you could just flip it, but it's obviously way more complicated than that. But yeah, anyway, you guys, tool, free for us.
Wow. I love this.
I don't
Thanks,
think
Patrick.
this is all right. I'm just gonna say I don't think this is fully working.
It's in beta.
Look at just because like so for example, Avengers Endgame and Iron Giant should be one
Mm-hmm.
because they both have Vin Diesel, but they have it as 2.
Why do
Well,
they have it as?
Well, it says we have to go to Emmett Walsh and watch Knives Out, and then watch and then get Chris Evans to Endgame.
Oh, well,
Which,
that's a good
look,
idea.
I love that trip.
We should.
But it's not strictly speaking necessary.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so I don't know who it's missing in that game in particular, but
Vin Diesel.
well, right, it's missing. I don't know what is going wrong there, but but it does anyway. It's an option. It's a helper. It's a step in the right direction. And Patrick Reynolds did it for us. So
Thank you, Patrick.
That's
listen,
awesome. Thank you, Patrick.
this feels
Thank
like
you.
a segment called "Beggars Shouldn't Be Choosers," Ezra, but you call it whatever you want.
I wonder if it can. Here's a question. I wonder if it actually can get to one ever. Like, I wonder if it's like it has a minimum of 2.
Yeah, you could do like Knives Out to Iron Giant, one move with Emma Walsh.
Okay, it works.
Yeah, has a Knives Out has an Iron Giant number of 1. Yeah, so it does work sometimes.
Okay, great. No, this is good. I'm still happy.
I don't know how many times you want me to send an email to this guy who did this work for free for us and be like, well, what if it was better? But maybe he'll keep improving it. Maybe he's excited now about it.
Maybe we've got a lot of good heat about the Oracle of Bacon being misused for just movies.
Well, I was also fascinated that he said it was like one of the most commonly requested features, which is like, who else is doing this? Why else do people need to do this?
Well, I think about it this way. What are the other features you could possibly request, right? Where it's like, would you want more bacon imagery about different kinds of bacon?
You're saying this is the only feature one could think
There's
about
not
for
that
this
many
website.
things, right?
Right. I guess I would want a feature where you go from one actor to another actor and it tells you whether you should.
Oh.
Not just if you can.
Oh, right. Is that the what was it, the Malcolm Jurassic Park feature?
Yeah, exactly. The Jurassic Park theory of the Oracle of Bacon. Okay, so that's it for the news. We're keeping this brief. Let's get into the game. It's time for segment 2, the game. As you know, for all of season 5, Kevin Bacon's Exquisite Corpse, we are playing a year-long movie game that we invented that is now made possible a little bit sometimes by the oracleofbacon.org. Oracleofbacon.org. So you have to spell it correctly, otherwise the thing doesn't work. Anyway, so we're playing a movie watching game where each week one of us picks a movie that has an actor in common with the previous week's movie, and we try to steer it towards our point-scoring moves from movies from earlier. You get it. Anyway, okay. One day I'm going to write this down so I can say it correctly twice. This week, we are watching Dead Ringers, the 1988 psychological thriller directed by David Cronenberg, who co-wrote the screenplay with Norman Snyder, and is based on the 1977 novel Twins by Barry Wood, which itself is based on the true story of Stuart and Cyril Marcus, twin gynecologists in New York. Although the novel doesn't really take much in common with their real lives, except the fact that they're twins and they're gynecologists and they're dead. So the movie's even key.
Those are key elements.
It's more inspired by than like actually like the story.
And you know how like every once in a while there will be like The Core and Armageddon, right? The Prestige.
Yeah.
And Edward Norton, The Illusionist, right?
Yeah, Bugs Life and Ants. Yeah.
Bugs Life and Ants, Deep Impact and Volcano, right? There's a lot of There's a lot of these.
You mean, those aren't right, but you get it,
Yeah, but Dante's Peak and Volcano.
Dante's Peak,
thank you.
But
what's great about this list is it's always one that's okay and one that's not okay.
Really bad, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
some of them are both okay.
Yeah, sometimes they're both
Bugs
okay.
Life is much better than Ants.
They're both fine. They're both fine.
But my point is, in 1988, there was Dead Ringers and there was Twins. Sorry, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
Right,
This
basically
movie
the
was-
same film.
This movie was originally called Twins
Right.
until Ivan Reitman got in there and was like, no, my movie's Twins.
Mine's Twins, because classically Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito would date the same woman and she wouldn't know which was which.
Yeah.
So it's too similar.
But so that's just like a little piece of interesting thing. Yeah,
that is
that's
interesting.
hilarious.
This movie is starring Jeremy Irons and a slightly sadder Jeremy Irons.
A Jeremy Irons that walks on the like the ball of his foot and like the heel of his foot.
Is that what he was doing?
That's how he tried to figure it out. Yeah. He's using the Alexander technique.
I mean,
yeah,
Jeremy Irons is incredible in this movie.
Yeah, he's so good.
I wouldn't
was
allow you
crazy.
to slander his and easily one of the greatest performances I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
I would say in one of
Just
the most Like just every shot, it's like, well, this
what
is
do you
the
want to
same-
pay attention to?
Every single shot of them together is like, this looks like it was shot awkwardly to avoid the fact that it's both Jeremy Irons. Like every
that's crazy.
shot
This
is like so distracting.
This is the best use of dual photography I have ever seen him. I was watching something
that's
recently.
just insane. No,
I
come
was
on.
watching something
No. Parent
recently.
Trap, the original, is the best use.
Wait, the
of
original?
60s?
Yeah, well, you're not a Lindsay
Yeah.
Lohan guy, are you?
Yeah.
Oh my god,
No.
that's such a better Parent Trap. I'm
This-
sorry.
No, the original Parent Trap was so good.
But this movie is the
Come back
great.
to
I
this.
was watching something recently that was doing this that looked really bad, and I was blown away watching this. How flawless.
It's really
For me,
good.
at least the illusion
So
was.
distracting. Every
It
scene, I
was-
was like, look at that. Oh, look, there goes his back. Oh, look, there's even a scene where they're like both in bed, and as soon as the camera comes in, he like turns his whole body away so you can't see his face dramatically.
Yeah, the impressive thing, though, like they don't do it every time, but the impressive thing absolutely is like they have camera moves, right, where
Yeah.
they are both moving in it.
This
right? If
was
you
the
think about-
first movie to use computer tracking for these types of shots. This
Oh,
movie
interesting.
pioneered that effect, right? So that's how they were able to do. Because usually, like as it's kind of alluding to, you cannot do camera movements and do this
Yeah.
type of thing. Because it needed the match for both takes.
Right.
But because they had computer tracking, they were able to do that here. Yeah, I think the effect
The
is
other-
a little
but also they
janky
do-
sometimes, but it's
they also
mostly
do a lot
flawless.
of hair double where there's just it just looks I feel like it looks like every scene would be a little different if there were two people, and that just kept hitting me the whole time. Like, this feels like you're doing this on purpose to hide something.
I love
Anyway,
the
That's
idea.
so wild. My experience was not
Yeah.
even close to that. I completely forgot. I didn't even
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about
I
it.
mean, like, if we want to get into like how incredible the performance is, the fact that like after the first few scenes, you immediately know if you're looking at Beverly or Elliot
It's insane.
from
How
the
do they do
performance.
that?
It is. This is honestly like I know Alex, you're not impressed
I
here.
never knew which of the
But
two guys it was.
this
Every time
is-
I was like, this is just Jeremy
Yeah.
Irons.
This
It
is
could just
like,
be a shot of him sitting, and I'm like, oh, it's that
That-
one.
that's
It's the
Beverly,
sad
yeah.
I don't
one.
know their
It's the not
personality
bad one.
differences. I don't understand what the differences are supposed to be.
Did
It
you
gets
watch
easier when
the
one of them
movie?
gets addicted to drugs before the
I-
other, but
I
they
mean,
go
like I
swap.
said, I genuinely think this is one of the most impressive performances I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a technical marvel. Like I said, for me, my wife, Ezra and Hunter all agree. So do most people who've seen this movie. The fact that you can like immediately tell the differences between these two characters are so stark and
I
fascinating.
can't tell characters apart who are played by different actors.
You knew it was
So-
the same actor though, right? You got that far. You knew this
Right,
is Jeremy
you knew it
Irons.
was both Jeremy
Yeah.
Irons.
Yeah, I knew
right?
it was always one of the two Jeremy Irons. But like, if Jeremy Irons was sleeping with
What
me
did
as
they-
twins, I would have definitely been. I'm with Claire. I would have been like, "Wait, you're twins? I knew something was weird, but I didn't know it was that."
Mm.
Okay, before we get into this, a couple of other things we got to do. Anthony, this was your pick. Why did you
Oh,
pick
yeah.
Dead Ringers for us this week?
I picked Dead Ringers for a few reasons. One, I've never seen it, so it's checking that box for my
Mhm.
suggestions. The other thing was, I think kind of like doing this podcast for years, we've covered a lot of the sort of big 80s kind of cult legendary directors, right? We did a whole month on Herzog.
Mhm. Not Herzog.
Not Herzog. The guy who did RoboCop. Why can't
Yeah,
I think of his
RoboCop.
name? He's one of my
Verhoeven.
favorite directors.
Oliver Verhoeven.
Yes. The whole month of Verhoeven. We've done a lot of John Carpenter. Done a
Mm-hmm.
lot of Spielberg. We've done a lot of. We've done Francis Ford Coppola. We've done all the big directors who were kind of working in the 80s. We haven't done any Cronenberg yet.
And we never will again.
Cronenberg is one of my.
We've
favorite
satisfied the
directors.
Cronenberg requirement. We're done. We've checked it off.
I think he's really, really fascinating. He makes full meals out of movies, not just in like a gross way, but in like a really interesting way. His
And-
movies can
Yeah,
be
you want to eat
Oh,
his
yeah.
movies.
things
You
you
know,
don't want
every
to
time I
eat.
see one of his movies, I'm like, ooh, tasty.
Yeah. I think he's a really fascinating director. I wanted to pick this one because, again, I've never seen it. I've always heard really great things. And this is the movie. If you look at David Cronenberg's filmography, his movies pre this, right, are all what people kind of associate with David Cronenberg the most, right? That's The Fly, Videodrome Scanners, his body horror elements. And then this is his transitional movie into much more psychological, kind of more art house-esque movies, right? And this is the zone he's sort of been in for the last 30 years, is making these types of movies, right? So I think that's a really interesting thing for like that transitional film. Like his whole career kind of hinges on this one. So I really wanted to fill in that gap to sort of understand the context, how you get from like The Fly and Scanners to like A History of Violence and Eastern Promises, you know?
Right.
Um
I should also say in this, this is your pick. This was also, we traveled last week from Unforgiven via a power card and the same budget size. So this movie cost about the same amount of money to make as Unforgiven. So just, I think, an interesting fact that I had forgotten until just now. And like, oh yeah, that is interesting. Let me summarize for those of you who've not seen Dead Ringers from 1988. Allow me to summarize. Oh, we got so caught up talking about Jeremy Irons. This also stars Genevieve Bujold,
who's also amazing in this movie.
Who's excellent. Yeah, she's really good. And deserves to be mentioned third behind the two Jeremy Irons. Okay, so here's a 5-point summary of Dead Ringers. The Mantle brothers are identical twins who are physically identical, but one is slightly cooler, which I just learned is because he's on the balls of his feet. They share a passion for cutting-edge experimental gynecology, treating women badly, and eventually doing drugs. They reach a great level of success with a fertility clinic, which they use to pick up chicks, nice, whom they share for a while, hilariously. But then it all comes crashing down when they sleep with a famous actress who can't tell she's being tricked. And then she's like fine with it as long as she only hangs out with the nice brother, who then she gets hooked on drugs. Instantly, he tries drugs. 3 days later, loses his mind, loses his whole career, switches from gynecology to making art metal tools, loses his business. And because they're twins, the same thing obviously immediately happens to the other brother, because they share a brain. And so they do drugs, they eat some cake, they do surgery on each other, and then they die. And I don't really care anymore. One of them like also cleans up a little bit after the other one's dead, but not much. And then
not
the movie
enough.
just ends.
Not enough to get your deposit back.
Yeah, for sure. They're not getting a deposit back on that clinic. Look, Anthony, I do not want to rain on your parade at all, and I'm going to be very careful about this the rest of the show. This is not for me. This is the most not for me, and I'm not going to say it's bad, even though it appeared bad every moment I was watching it. It's black licorice. This was pure black licorice.
I want to make
why is it not for you?
Because I don't know how to rank this on with anything else we've seen before. This is just this. There's a just its own Dead Ringers list. It's number one and also last.
It is incomprehensible to me anybody liking it, but I recognize that they exist. And there are people who I respect.
At what point? I want to know. I'm like trying to learn about you, because I actually like I saw your Letterboxd review where you basically said what you just said.
Yeah.
Before I saw the movie, and I was like, "Whoa, this is gonna be one of those hardcore Cronenberg movies," because obviously Alex bounced off it hard. And then I started watching it. I was like, "Wait, when is it gonna get freaky?" And then it got a little freaky, and then it was over.
It didn't even have to be like it wasn't even that gross. No, it was not. There was a little bit of gross. It was clear that the person making it wanted it to be gross, and that also like I felt that a lot. Like
I didn't love the what? The dream sequence?
The Siamese twin sequence?
Oh, yeah. Where they're Siamese twins and she chews through the flesh connecting them. That was pretty bad.
Not my favorite.
Yeah.
Also, the surgery was pretty oogie.
I mean, come on. Them like dressed. It's probably the most famous image from this movie, right? Is them dressed as like satanic priest doing the surgery is incredible. I mean, the way that's designed, the fact that I think it's his sister is the costume designer in this movie.
Oh, you just mean all the people in red scrubs all the time?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was a good job with his sister.
Makes the joke when she called me a costume person, which is really, really funny. That whole design for that sequence, right, is just like, it's mind-blowing how incredible that looks on film. Like them all dressed in like these red scrubs with like the red masks. They look like I said, like satanic priests doing a ritual. It's incredible.
I wish I could tell you more specifically, and I don't want to focus on this because I want you guys who had a good time to talk about your good time.
I don't know. But this is just like the first segment of.
But this was like, it really is like black licorice. I feel like I put this in my mouth and I was like, not for me. Like right away.
How fast?
Early on.
Right away.
Early on, pass. I was like, the first half where it was just like an awkward sitcom premise, but played seriously. I was just like, there's something that he's interested in this movie that I am not interested in. The things he's focusing on, the parts he's showing, the things that he cares about. And then I felt like the second half was like it has a few extremely gross sequences, but also just like the way he makes them look, the gaunt, drug addicted faces and the shit everywhere, like stuff like in their like just the filthiness of it, the thing that he cared. And also there's a certain thing that I need in movies, otherwise I start to feel like my brain is broken, which is where like the actions seem human, and like him calling her hotel room and then hearing someone else answer, the most famous person in the world, he calls her hotel room and she doesn't answer personally, and he's like, she's cheating on me, I need to die immediately, is just so inexplicable that I am like, I feel the rest of the movie, I'm like, I'm not connected to these people emotionally at all. I don't care what happens to them. They don't seem real. Like, this is one of those movies where I was like, I should have known it was real, because they made no effort to convince me that any of this is plausible. So it must be based on a true story. But I just felt like I've never met a person like any of the people in this movie. I've never seen a world like any of the people in this world. It's a cartoon that it is uncanny valley of emotion. And I just, from early on, I was just like, get it out.
But I mean, I have a few questions for you, Alex. One, is there any like, because it was kind of like within the cut, you also weren't a big fan of. And I wonder,
it just, I feel like I should have on that one. This one, I don't feel bad for not liking. In the cut, I feel bad for not liking.
I mean, do you get uncomfortable around movies that have heavy sexual, like psychosexual themes and storytelling tropes? I mean, I'm an honest. This is honest.
You can answer that question. Yes.
No, I mean, I've seen plenty of movies. Anthony, I don't want to brag, but I have seen movies where they just do sex and no plot.
Yeah,
I've seen
the weird stuff in it also.
If it's that plus gross, no, I can't. I mean, certainly I get grossed out
Anthony
quickly
didn't
on
say
that sort
sexual.
of thing.
He said psychosexual.
Well, and I'm not sure I know exactly what that means, so I'll be honest.
Maybe the Oracle of Fiction can tell me.
The thing about like this movie,
it's psychological and sexual at the same time. Generally with like some sort of horror bent, right?
Yeah, horror and sex. No, I do not care for that. But I also don't like horror and dogs or horror and empty field. I don't like horror. I don't like anything horror.
Pizza horror?
I don't like. I like a thriller, and I don't mind tension, but horror elements just not for me. I don't understand why people like it. I can do like the jokey horror in a way. I can do camp horror better than I can do like horror, if that makes sense.
I mean, I think with like a filmmaker like Cronenberg, right? He's obviously a very subversive human being, a very subversive filmmaker, and he is not. He could tell, like, the story itself is trying to be like transgressive and trying to be subversive, right? Like, I think like those things you say you don't like about it, kind of like the unrealness of it, the kind of uncanny valleyness of it, like that's all like purposeful. He could tell a much more straightforward story. And the thing I kind of like really liked about this movie is like, if you look at the brothers, the twins, as like they're in balance. In the first bit of the movie, they are like a perfect circuit of one human being. And once that circuit breaks, the movie breaks with it, right? Structurally, story-wise, it is like them being out of sync. The film starts to actually feel out of sync with the story it's telling, right? The way that he like immediately becomes a drug addict, which normally really like I really hate movies that moralize about drug abuse, like stuff like Requiem for a Dream, which is like if you smoke pot once, you're gonna get
You're
6
gonna
months
do
later.
heroin.
I was gonna say,
pervert. But
this is a cool horror movie version of that movie where they smoked weed and then they danced and then they all died from it.
But this movie, though, I think that the drugs aren't. It's not that he's addicted to drugs. He is so codependent that he becomes a mirror of whoever he's dating, right? So that is why, like, the drugs aren't like. It's not really moralizing about drug addiction. It is just that he only knows how to mirror, right? And that's his like form of intimacy, right? So because she is a drug addict, he becomes a drug addict, right? And like that's what like that is sort of like there for. And,
right. And when she leaves, he falls apart in 3 days. She comes back to him, and he has 10 years of past. It felt like she was traveling at the speed of light or something, that she came back and was like, it's been a week for me filming in Phoenix. And he's like, I have lost everything. I have hurt everyone.
I think they said it was 10 weeks. I'm pretty sure that's
Yeah,
a
10
line
weeks,
earlier
yeah.
in the movie.
It felt like for her, she looked the same, and he had gone through. I mean, it did
Right.
feel like.
His whole
So
life
one of the things I was thinking
apart.
about doing, I was gonna reach out, and I did, but I was originally gonna reach out to my. I have a friend who's a gynecologist, and I was going to ask him for his opinion on how gynecology is portrayed in this movie, and then very quickly it became clear that even if it's not how it is in real life, drugs are portrayed much less realistically than gynecology, and so that is more the focus. So the drug thing bothered me a lot. I know you.
I mean,
you started this to say you didn't hate it like you normally do,
No.
Anthony, but that part did bother me.
I mean, it really worked for me in this movie. I mean, this movie, I think is kind of interesting to compare it with Unforgiven last week, because something I talked about there was the way that, like, these things that have always kind of been in the background of society and a sort of subtext in Unforgiven have gotten louder over the last 30 years and are now just straight up out there talking about, like, they're good boys, they don't deserve punishment, right? It's like
Right.
this thing we see all the time. And what I think is so fascinating about this movie is this obviously wasn't necessarily the intention, but I think that if you look at this movie, the way I read this movie as, like, it's almost the way it captures modern internet toxic masculinity and like the game, like, kind of pickup artist culture
Mhm.
of men who are super intellectualized women and intellectualized sex and believe that, like they, I have this really good book learning of it, I understand all this stuff, but they have no idea of the emotional or the practical elements of these things, right? And it's this character who immediately gets hurt by one woman, and he responds by seeing all women as mutants on the inside. He begins to actively hurt other women who are not the women who hurt him, right? I think, like, the way this film
Wait, who
captures
hurt?
that.
Who got hurt by a woman?
Beverly, when, like, he gets hurt by the girl he thinks she's
She's the
cheating
bad
on him,
one.
right? Yeah,
Oh, that part.
right.
Okay,
They're
yeah.
kind
And
of
he, like,
both.
just
I mean, who's the
they're
good
both
one? There's
they
not really a
both,
good one.
there
Well,
is
he
no
was the
good
nice
one.
one
There's both
before,
sides.
where he was like, "I like her as a person," and his brother
Yeah,
was
he's
like,
That's
"No,
what
nice,
I
you
but
mean.
just do
the
sick shit."
whole their relationship is so messed up, like the
Yeah.
twins, and then you involve this other person in it emotionally, and then basically I feel like, because I mean, there's a lot of red flags about both of them well before we get
Oh,
into
yeah.
drug use and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
I mean, it's like
And
like I
I'm not
said,
saying
like
they were great people before. No.
a study of, like, the nice guy kind of trope that you see on the
Right.
internet a lot these days. The way this movie captures that, I think, is really fascinating. It's just a
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
interesting like, kind of thing he's sort of saying about this stuff that it's become louder. It's like with everything that's fucked up in this world, everyone is just saying the quiet part loud now. But, like, this is a movie in which that really kind of captures that mentality towards women and sort of, like, yeah, it's interesting.
There's
I will
stuff
say I
I've read
did.
on Reddit that would make me believe that a guy would overreact to a phone call like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, to me, that seemed
Sure. Yeah.
like it made me cringed, cringed hard, and held that cringe until the end of the film. But it did seem
And what
believable
part
to
of
me.
that was fun for you.
It wasn't fun. It was awesome, but
Yeah.
it wasn't fun. It's not a fun
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, holding
Yeah.
a cringe for 2/3 of a movie is just not. That's just very licorice. I don't know.
I mean, listen, like, I think Hunter's right. Like, I don't think this movie. I'm fine with movies not being fun, right? I think I'm fine with movies being challenging and, like I said earlier, subversive and, like, showing me something I haven't seen before and, like, just giving me stuff to, like, kind of mull around in my brain and sort of, like, work on, like, a very deep, like, psychological level. And I think Cronenberg is sort of a master at that. I really love the fact that, like, this movie, I've never quite seen anything quite like this, right? It is just a very interesting, unique film at the end of the day, even if you don't look at any of the sort of deeper meaning or the subtext to stuff. It's not your typical big budget Hollywood movie. It's not a happy story. It is a very challenging, difficult one. And I find that very rewarding to have a
Yeah.
movie like this,
Me too. I related to it thematically because it's about codependent relationships, and I
Yeah.
feel like I in my life, not in the terms of like drug use, obviously, which is why I think the drug use had to be in there, because if it's going to be about codependency, you got to have drugs. I feel like I've had experiences with relationships that were toxic in that way because of like similar types of problems.
Mhm.
So I feel like I related to it on an emotional level very much so. And
I
Yeah.
I
even though
wonder.
it's turned up to 11, I
Yeah,
I still believed it.
I wonder if like if the drugs are like a bigger problem for me than like I wonder if maybe because I feel like that thing about toxic relationships and like and codependency super interesting, and I almost feel like the drugs were like a Deus ex machina to like get rid of them instead of actually dealing with this emotional journey.
Yeah,
Instead, they
but
just their
drugs are such
bodies
a
turned off, and so now we can just say, "Oh, they're crazy" because they did laudanum or whatever or Dilaudid, so now they're crazy now. They're just
yeah,
crazy.
but drugs are such a perfect like metaphor for codependent relationships as well because drugs are something you do because it's fun, right? We're having a good time, it's enjoyable, but it's also destroying you on the inside in much the same way that a couple can be convinced that they're in a good
Mm.
relationship, but actually it's destroying them both.
Yeah, and you get addicted to that, right? And
Yeah,
like you
and the
literally
addictive
cannot
quality
get
too.
away from it, right? And it's
Exactly.
and like I said, the way he is like Beverly mirrors his partners, right? And the fact that like both of them are sort of like this idea that they just need to get in sync. Like I kind of really like the way that it starts off with. You think Beverly is kind of the weaker one, the one that's sort of like less stable. And you very quickly near in the back half learn that Elliot is also just as fucked up.
Oh yeah,
He's just
Elliot's
as
way worse.
insecure. Yeah,
Elliot's
Elliot is
so
way
much
worse.
more invested in the relationship, like between the
Yeah.
two of them. He basically can't stand the idea of
Mhm.
them not living this way, to where he doesn't even question it. At least Elliot
Yeah.
has doubts and does think like you can see it in his performance and also things he says where it's like he's sort of thinking like, "Oh, I think maybe this thing me and my brother do is like maybe kind of fucked up. Like maybe this is actually not good." Now he doesn't know what to do and obviously he can't feel like the movie is about him not really being able to live outside of that at all. But he does seem more self-aware.
I do sort of feel like it's worth mentioning briefly, at least, that the thing they do that I called a sitcom premise is actually sexual assault.
Yeah, totally.
100%
Hmm.
is sexual assault and
Yeah,
not cute. Yeah,
yeah, and
I
I
should
mean, I
mention that.
don't.
The idea of like dating the same person and like kind of switching back and forth is like a cute sitcom premise. Sleeping with people by pretending to be somebody else is definitely
It
assault.
it's kind of I mean, I'm just thinking about it. It's kind of like the idea of a parasitic twin, but if both the twins are parasitic twins, right?
Mhm.
They're both kind
Yeah.
of feeding off each other and the people around them in a really problematic way. I mean, this is an interesting one in that I okay, there's movies that I wish I could unwatch. And I don't think this is that. Like I don't regret watching this. I'm not gonna watch it again. I won't say I enjoyed it, and I don't know who I could possibly recommend this to. Um, but I
Big
don't.
Jeremy Irons fan. Like, have you
Yeah.
met a guy with a giant chest
Yeah,
tat of Jeremy Irons?
Yeah,
And they
it's
have
like
not seen Dead Ringers.
He
You would
could
have to be
bring
like,
it right
tattoo
away.
and seen Dead Ringers, you would be
Yeah.
making his day.
yeah.
I love the idea of a recommendation of like just if you like Jeremy Irons, do this. Like
Yeah, it's
like
twice as many Jeremy Ironses.
well, I mean, because depending on what Jeremy Irons you saw before that you liked, this could be maybe not your favorite next, right? It's like you know
Well, he
what,
plays plenty of bad guys. This is
Yeah,
just
yeah,
if you
come
want
on.
more Jeremy's Irons.
more Jeremy's Irons in the fires.
I think you could also recommend. What was that movie we watched where the guy cuts off the woman's arms and legs? If you liked that movie, you definitely like this one.
I skipped that one. I think good
I'm
for
sure you
me.
did.
Wait,
Anthony,
what
you would
movie
have
are you
been here for
talking
that.
about?
Were you not even actually? This is one of the problems with the with our show's structure is I don't remember
Doesn't sound
who all
fun.
was on the show. There was
Yeah,
it
I
was
do not. I remember this.
he is like a plastic surgeon. Uh, oh man, I don't want to have people listen to a podcast where I Google stuff.
Hmm.
How long ago was this?
I mean, it was definitely a while ago.
Okay.
There it is. Boxing Helena.
I
Boxing
was not
Helena.
here for that. No.
Yeah,
None of you guys
No,
are here for
never
this.
seen it.
This is a
Never seen it.
Jennifer Lynch movie.
Don't know anything about it.
Oh man. Okay. So he is like. Anyway, it's funny. This is actually before I'd watched any David Lynch, I think, and so this made me think I don't like the Lynch family at all. It's an interesting movie. He's like a plastic surgeon, and he's like, oh, you got in a car accident, so I had to amputate your arms and legs, and now you live in my house on this little chair, and I have to do everything for you. And it's about codependency and sickness, and it's definitely one of the most fucked up movies I've ever seen. And it's got Bill Paxton, who I like. But anyway, so if somebody loved that movie, I might recommend this.
Yeah. I
thought for sure you were all there for that, so it's kind of weird now to explain it. But
now we had to talk about that. It feels like this kind of makes a little more sense if, Cronenberg as a director has a mission to have people take more showers. Because I think that makes a lot of sense to me, where it's just like, you know what? My kids did not want to take showers. I'm going to make a thing that makes everyone take showers right after it. And I think showers are good for you. I think it's good to think about stuff. I think it's good to feel comfortable.
You're gonna want to shower. He's saying every time he's about to throw a movie out there, you're gonna want to shower in places you can't even shower. You know what I mean?
If you want to hear us talk about Boxing Helena, by the way, this is back on episode 337, which is still a lot of episodes into the show. And it had Chris, Tanya, and Sarah Hathaway on it. And it was somebody sponsored this. Somebody made us watch this. Yeah, we did not care for it. But it's interesting. No. And now that I know that it's like the Lynch family, and I've liked the Lynches more, I don't know. Anthony, you should probably watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you mean by the Lynch family. Is it just someone with the last name Lynch?
No, it's David Lynch's daughter.
It's David Lynch's daughter.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And I don't know what he did, if he was involved in the movie in any way, but yeah, it's David Lynch's daughter. Okay. What else was I going to say? Oh, I do want to talk really briefly about. So I did ask my gynecologist what he thought of this movie. He'd seen it.
You're a gynecologist.
He's a friend, and does some I do writing coaching with him. I do Zoom coaching with him about his writing projects, and so I refer to him as my gynecologist, and it's a great bit that I've been doing privately just for my wife for a while. Now you guys all get to enjoy it. I reached out to my gynecologist.
I would have liked it more had it not been on the heels of this movie. I'll be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, for sure, that's what I was like. Is this what it did for clowns? Did this do for male gynecologists, or boy-necologists as I call them? And I know guy-necologist was right there, but it's a spelling joke. It doesn't work as well out loud. So boy-necologist. Anyway, so I was like, what, does this mess up what boy-necologists are like? And he was like, he watched it before he was in the profession, but he said, I will just say the job is much less Penthouse Forum than movies make it out to be, which is very fair. But interestingly, he grew up in New York, and he knew several kids whose moms were patients of the real brothers the movie's based on.
Oh, whoa.
Okay.
Which is crazy. So, I do think the real brothers of this, the Marcus twins, there's not actually there's a book written about them that I found that I don't have time to read, but I am interested in their story, and there's not as much about their story on the internet as I would have expected for having led to this movie. So I'm super. I mean, they clearly had a lot of mental illnesses,
right.
But and there's the drug thing with them is really actually an interesting debate where they died in a way that looked for sure like a drug overdose, but the toxicology reports were absolutely clean on both of them, which is weird. And then there was a later second toxicology that was maybe some Dilaudid, but we're not positive.
I thought they died from withdrawals, is what I read.
So then because the toxicology reports were clean, people suggested it was from withdrawals, but then they had none of the physical signs of someone who died. Usually when you die from withdrawals, you have chewing on your tongue, you have bruising in certain areas, you have there's signs you look for that did not exist on them either. So it's really unclear. Yes, Ezra, you've raised your hand.
Can we skip?
Yeah, let's move ahead. But it didn't give. Okay, so I just wanted to take. So let's make this nicer. So I did have this idea from this though, for another spin-off podcast, which is you get people who have done a job for a while that is portrayed in a movie, and you talk to them about how their job is or is not like the way it is portrayed in movies. So talking to a boy-necologist about dead ringers, or we watch a season of House with a real doctor,
I just want to say, I think this is a great idea, Alex. I just want to say, not for a second did I buy any aspect of the gynecology presented in this movie. Like,
well, no,
even at the very beginning, I was like,
the
yeah,
movie
no.
is not how gynecology works. But this
Yeah.
was, it's not.
He also
And
doesn't
it's
really
not,
care about gynecology that much, I
Well,
found,
no,
which
but
I
I
was kind
would,
of relieved by, to be
right.
honest.
So this is really less about. This is not criticizing movies. This is like using movies as an excuse to talk to people about their jobs and
Totally.
how they're perceived. And I think that would be super interesting.
I love that.
Every movie that has comedians in it has nothing to do with my life that I've ever seen. We watched that Tom Hanks movie about when he was
Punchline.
Punchline. We watched Punchline on the show, and they have lockers at the comedy club, and it's just
That's
hilarious.
ridiculous. That's
Each comic
insane.
has their own locker in the green room.
So
which in New
ridiculous.
York, so there's like only up to 18 comedians, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, but like Marvelous Miss Maisel has nothing to do with anything that I've ever heard of in the stand-up world, but is a good show. People like it. It's a really nice show.
Yeah.
I do think it would be interesting to like talk to people, use it as an excuse to talk about people's jobs and how they're interesting. We did have when we talked about it on this program, we had a clown come on. We did an interview with a clown who was like, actually, it didn't make our profession bad. It didn't scare people away. What really ruined our profession was that it costs almost nothing to become a clown. You just buy a pair of big shoes and a nose, and then you can go to parties. And so in the late 80s, early 90s, the market was flooded with people who were not good at it and were actually just like legitimately kind of creepy, not like horror movie space clown, just like creep dudes.
They were just creepy
so that
people.
actually ruined our profession. Anyway, so the idea for the show is more like talking like that to people about their jobs. Not to criticize Cronenberg for his, although I am interested in like what is cutting edge gynecology like do you know people like this? Are there like bros who are like competitive about their fertility treatments? If you got a patent for your thing, would you get it bronzed? Would you have like a gold statue of the thing you made, the disgusting surgery tool you made?
I mean, isn't it with like Cronenberg? It's more of like, he picked the story it's based off of some two kind of colleges, but you can kind of see where like from the base premise of this, the way he kind of works backwards on his themes, right? The idea that like these are like two guys who are like super intellectual and clinical about female bodies, obsessed with the womb. They share a woman, right? They literally like they're two guys who came out of a womb together, and their whole obsession is getting back to the same womb, right?
Yeah,
that is like it is the way it is like kind of working back. He takes like he lists his premise, and then it's like, okay, where can I dig in here? What is like interesting, and what can I say? He's obviously like he's a huge fan of like Freud and like Freud psychology, even though he doesn't like necessarily believe it can be applied or it's real, but it's a really good like starting point and a template to use for where he decides to dig in on stuff, which is one of the things I think he makes him so fascinating, especially when you look at his sort of like all of his films in his sort of like art house phase. Would be it something like Crash, which is like incredibly subversive and challenging, or even something like kind of his more Hollywood-esque successful stuff like Eastern Promises or A History of Violence.
Yeah.
The way he kind of like he starts with the premise and then kind of takes a big step back from it and finds those things that he can like dig in and show you that you haven't quite seen before in a movie, or how he can like intellectually apply his sort of belief to create interesting frames, to create really horrifying elements.
I definitely think that Freudianism is much better as a movie technique than as a medical technique. So like it is really, especially for horror movies, to use sort of Freudian ideas to like explain why people are doing things. And I can't, this is not speaking for my gynecologist, but I get the impression from the way he's talked about other gynecologists in his career, in his field, and this is pretty Freudian, that it's less about the sexuality and it's much more about pleasing your mom, about something. It's more about mom issues than about like the like gross part. So I like that as a part of this, and I like that as a tool, especially for 80s horror movies. I do also, just to tag on what you were saying earlier, Anthony, about the like codependency and stuff. It is an interesting movie about partnership, because they are like we're talking about their relationship partners, but they're also like lab partners and then partners in a medical firm, and they're research partners, and they share sexual partners. Like it is definitely somebody who's interested in partnerships and how they work, and I think that's interesting, not just as the emotional relationship one, but also the like sibling one and the professional one.
And also, I mean,
balance, one of them does part of the research and the other one does part of the invention, and like they clearly have different skills that are working really well together early on, which is interesting.
It's the duality of the people, right? The way like they even kind of comment on it, but like Elliot and Beverly, kind of like a masculine and feminine name, right? Like the way they are sort of like the two halves, right? And like the way they at the beginning of the movie, there's like this really great line where like when Elliot accepts the like gold plated thing and he goes back to his brother and it's like, I wish you were there, and he goes, I was there, right?
Yeah,
because at like that point they are essentially the same person. They share an experience together, and the movie is about, again, it's like that, them being in sync, them creating a perfect circuit through the first half of the movie. And then once that circuit gets broken, everything starts to spin out of control.
All right, we got to start moving towards the exit here, Hunter.
I got a question. I just want to. I got a question for the panel. Would you do this if you had like a clone or an identical twin? Would you do a Dead Ringers? Would you if you had like a spare you that could do half the things you have to do and kind of double your life experience?
I mean, obviously not the sexual assault part.
Of course,
but the part where
I'm not asking you that.
Go to this boring awards dinner and schmooze because you're good at schmoozing while I do more research. Like that part, maybe
you do that. You do that.
I mean, I don't like doing anything where I could get caught. Conceivably, like the idea of being caught at anything in a lie, it's just so upsetting to me.
Well, I think, could you imagine, Alex, your drunk version coming in and making a fool of you? How embarrassing that would be. Like you get to watch yourself stumble into a room and make a scene.
I would say that would be more upsetting if it was a clone than if it was a twin.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the public perception of me, how that would change if I showed up as a drunk clone.
I mean,
Alex clone.
Oh yeah, that's a good
Alex
one.
Clone, you got. Yep,
I mean,
Alex clone.
I want to disparage all twins out there, but I have definitely known some fucking weird twins in my life. I mean, there's some really normal twins I've met.
Actually, I will say that's actually been my biggest disappointment with twins is how many of them seem like just people.
I have met some fucking weirdos.
Heck yeah.
That were like and you see like online, there was this photo I saw of these twins who married other twins, and they all lived together, and they all dressed the same every day.
Okay. So the part of that I understand, which is like actually there's a lot of stuff about our personalities that are compatible with your personalities, but living together, even if you're like really good at telling them apart. Like sometimes you're sleepy and you just woke up. Like there's just no reason to have someone who looks just like your partner but isn't around your house at night. I can't handle that.
You just know. You hear about stories like that, and you know. The thing is, the stakes are super low because they're all freaks. They don't give a fuck. Like, two sets of twins being married and living together is not a bug. It's a feature. These people. Right?
Okay, I see.
Those weirdos love that shit. They're fucking creepy people, right? Again, I'm not saying all twins are like this.
I just want to speak on behalf of Ezra's face in case you're not watching us on the YouTube stream. Not all of us subscribe to the opinions expressed by Anthony Lopez are not necessarily the opinions of Read It and Weep or Ezra or I.
This felt like an important thing to say. Like, just most other opinions that are not me are not my opinions.
Right.
Just assume I'm not
unsubscribe from all of our opinions and their results.
If you're frowning, I'm frowning. How about that?
I actually feel like it was actually like silly to talk about the gynecology because this movie is so not how twins or women or drugs work either. That like, of course, is not how gynecology works.
I do believe that might have been how the 80s work.
Well, and also like the parts about the gynecology is like actually like probably not that far off where they're like there's a fertility clinic and you do a test and then you give bad news. That probably happens a lot.
Yeah, gynecologists probably look at their patients all the time and are like, I know chicks who fuck dogs, right? That probably happens in real life.
Oh God!
Look, I'm not
again, guys. Just to note.
Yeah, I'm also
like,
out
if
now.
There was an audio term, like an audio signal every time Ezra has disengaged. I think that would be good.
Being just like a light or something.
I have one
will
last
say, Anthony,
question.
there are a lot of doctors with bad bedside manner. That does not. That is actually very reasonable.
But okay, so I have a question for you guys. Was the artist in the wrong? Like, if someone comes in and has you cast a bunch of stuff, and then you display that in an art gallery with your name on it, not the doctor's, is that technically like plagiarism?
I mean, I would care about the contract for sure. Looking at that, but
yeah,
I mean, he
probably
didn't have
not
him
smart
sign the
legally.
contract. He came in as a lunatic and said, "I need you to make these fucked up things."
Yeah,
but then he was like,
"Make them out of metal." Are they?
And he was like, "I made those," and that's pretty fucked up, right?
But yes, obviously yes. But I also think because the guy was like, no, he was like, this is a good idea for art, and then the crazy guy's like, that's not art. These are legitimate surgical tools. And then when he displayed them as art, as like tools for mutant women or whatever. Like actually like in that. He didn't mean that they were tools. He meant that as like a weird art piece. So I do sort of see where he took a crazy person's real idea and was like that, but as a joke. And I kind of like that. I kind of like understand it.
Yeah, like honestly, I think ideas are overrated and that execution is the important part anyways. So like there's a million good ideas out there everywhere. Yeah. Like if somebody's saying I made it,
I'm better at execution than ideas.
Oh, really? Yeah. I feel like I have like if I had to just sit down and come up with good ideas, I could do it forever. But
really?
Like actually executing on any of those ideas, that's really hard.
But so this is that's the kind of people I like to work with, and I think all three of you are kind of like that. And I am because I've told Ezra this before in our more serious art conversations, but I definitely every idea I have, I assume was a fluke and is the last time I'll ever have an idea.
Yeah,
that is how my creative brain works, and that's why I'm still doing jokes that are older than other people's jokes, because every time I'm like, I'll never write again. Every creative output I've ever made feels like an accident that will not be repeatable. And I love people who have a million ideas, and those are the people I like to hang out with, because like I can cast the tools if we can work on an idea together. And sometimes I feel like people had ideas and didn't recognize the value in their own ideas, and I can help with that. And that's what this artist did with the crazy guy.
I would rather have like 2 ideas and being able to execute on them well than have like, a million ideas and like struggling.
I mean, I really am like super interested in creative partnerships for this reason. And what I do think what they had in the early part is that there are creative partnerships where where you are better together than you were separately, where you make each other better, you make better products together. And there are a lot of creative partnerships where that doesn't happen, and I don't understand why those last. The problem is with me historically is that the kind of people who have the yin to my yang on creative partnerships don't like, our brains don't work well enough together to like actually continue to work. Like we fight, or we will like, because part of my brain is I'd like us to be on time or whatever. And, I would like some help with scheduling every once in a while or whatever. This is not you guys, not in this project.
Yeah, we made
other projects that have not lasted this long, that have not worked out, fall apart for that reason, is that the things that make you really creatively gel sometimes make you structurally not gel. This is too serious for like this conversation, but I
like it.
Thoughts on this, and I appreciate it.
Who cares?
Going there.
They liked it. I like to just tell the audience you liked it. You enjoyed it. Listen, audience, come on.
Okay, I have one last thought, and I'm just going to mention very briefly the thing that I hate the most in all movies, and this is related to jobs, is I hate when a microphone feeds back because the speaker is bad at public speaking. That's not how that works.
Yeah,
it's not
annoying.
If it was the right volume for your sober brother, it is the right volume for the.
Yeah, that made no sense. That also bothered me, actually. That's one thing we can't agree on with bad stuff in this movie.
It happens in every movie. It happens in I saw a brand new show that came out in the last couple weeks where they did it. Like, it's still happening, and I don't understand how there isn't a person in the sound department in charge of that who's like, I will not do this. This is not how sound works.
Well, it's like silencers, right? Silencers in movies are not at all like silencers are
right. Yeah.
Right? There is just a cinematic tradition and language to it. Right? The way silencers sound in movies, the way microphones feed back.
Yeah.
There's just within movies. Yeah, these things happen.
Yeah,
they don't happen in real life, but they happen in.
It's like
Diamond
like Robitussin. We have this grape flavor, which is not grape, but it's grape flavor that we have. That's it. So it's
Right, we
microphone
agree
flavor.
that that's grape flavor, even though it's not
flavor.
flavored like grape. We agree that this is movie mics, not mics in real life. I guess it doesn't bother me with silencers because I know nothing about and would prefer to know nothing about
Exactly,
guns.
that's the difference, huh?
But I know a lot about public speaking.
Right. Yeah.
And what bothers me about it is like the potential results of good people who are like, what if I go up to the microphone and it can feedback because it can tell I'm nervous? And I just want them to know they're going to be okay.
I think the reason it's bothersome is because, so like film people are not like gun people, although they might have a gun person, you know what I mean? Like I'm not going to just assume in this movie everybody was a gun person. So the silencers being wrong, whatever, it's not their field. Microphones is pretty close to their field.
It is.
So yeah.
I wonder if it's because so many writers are afraid of public speaking. They all write as if public speaking can go wrong at any moment that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, this is a pet peeve I've brought up on the show before. We'll bring up again. I'm not keeping a list of every time it happens because it happens too often, but I hate it. All right, we need to quickly move on, briskly move on to the master quality list. So Ezra, we're at this weird place now. Where does the 1988 film Dead Ringers feature on our list of the best movies of all time of season 5?
I'm gonna put it at one below Hard to Be a God because it feels like that's the closest to it, and I liked Hard to Be a God more.
Okay, that's fair. So you're ranking it as 18th.
Wild.
Interesting.
Which is, I'm not saying this is a bad one. It's
that's a very good logic. I like what you're doing there.
I think it feels like the closest to it, where this is actually interesting. I don't begrudge it existing. It's not my aesthetics, but yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I feel similarly with In the Cut, although I do feel like that felt like it had things to say that were, I think, subversive in a more important way, and this feels maybe subversive in a like question what makes you feel grossed out about gross things, which I just am not
I agree
as persuaded by.
that In the Cut is better, but I don't know if I agree with that second part.
I think it's an interestingly related to In the Cut and maybe to Hard to Be God. I feel like Hard to Be the God might not have been good or about anything.
Hard to Be a God ruled and definitely is about stuff. I'm not sure that how much of it made it into the movie, but some of it definitely did.
So in terms of what would I watch again over this movie? It is almost everything on this list. I don't know if that's how this ranking should go. I think I would watch this again over The Transformers the movie, but that's probably it. I think I would rather watch A Girl with Character in Russian again over this. I would definitely.
But what about The Transformers the movie on triple speed?
Yes.
Well, you can always have to do that. It would make it very short. So you're saying this should go below The Transformers the movie because of that?
My God, I can't believe how many times I've had to say this on this podcast. The good thing about The Transformers the movie is that you can watch it on triple speed and you lose nothing. Okay,
right.
You can't watch Dead Ringers on triple speed and expect to get anything out of it.
I watched
and
it on
that's why
double
The Transformers the movie is great. You did? You
With
watched
subtitles.
it on triple speed, Ezra?
Double speed. I couldn't do triple.
Double speed.
Triple
okay.
is crazy.
Double speed is
All right.
okay.
So here's what we're gonna do though. This is now you guys know that the math is weird because I'm ranking this as 20th. So you know that this is already going to be at a place you don't necessarily agree with.
I know it.
I want to say before we get further. Well, actually, I should have said this before the two of you spoke. This is a top 5 movie on this list for me, but also this list is always. It's impossible for me.
This is not a list of your personal taste. This is a list of the best movies of all time.
But what if your values are so far from the list, it becomes harder for you to decide where to put this one on it. You know what I'm saying?
No, each week you have to come up with your reasoning for how the list is written.
Yeah.
But remember, this is the definitive ranking of the best movies of all time. So that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna put mine right above One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I actually liked it even more than that movie. This is like one of my favorite movies we've ever talked about.
So we're gonna call that. Should I be calling these halves? Maybe that would be more interesting.
Like my top 3 on this list would be like number 1 In the Cut, number 2 Third Man, and then like number 3 would be this movie of what we've talked about thus far.
So interesting. Okay, so that you are ranking this officially as 4.5 or 3.5.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, Anthony.
This is my number 2 movie on the list.
Whoa.
This is above Edge of Tomorrow, below The Third Man.
Yes. I think this movie...
Forgot. Wait, I'm sorry. I forgot where Edge of Tomorrow is. I'm going to move mine to above Edge of Tomorrow. I definitely like this better than
I think this movie is a complete masterpiece. I think it's one of the greatest performances I've ever seen in a movie. It's a technical marvel in a very, very non-showy way. It's very, very calm. It's very reserved. But what it's doing there is true movie fucking magic, and I love that. I love movie magic.
Yeah.
This movie is movie magic for an hour and 55 minutes. It's all Jeremy Irons all the time. He's in literally every scene. He's incredible in it. I think this movie is a full goddamn meal. It is something you could chew on, you can analyze, you could teach this in a goddamn class. This movie is incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I think a class is the only place it makes sense to watch it. So what that has done is it's given us an average score of 10.75, making this the new official 10th best movie of all time. Or no, wait, sorry, 11th best movie of all time, behind Out of Sight, ahead of Battleship Potemkin, which actually does feel like kind of how we feel as a group. That's how it should feel. The only thing that can screw this up is if you try to play the game, if you try to like math it to make it go where you want it to go. Okay. So next up, that's where we ranked it. That it did not quite crack the top 10, but it's close. All right. Next up, Ezra. We have some business to do here because Dead Ringers was Anthony's second movie pick, point scoring movie of the year, meaning Anthony has just been awarded 5 big points. Ezra, what does that do to our score?
I don't even know. I don't have the window up.
All right. Well, it was 8. It was Hunter and I 8, Anthony and you 7 going into this.
Okay, Anthony, you now have. Well, wait, Anthony, are you awarding any points? I guess that's what we have to do.
Well, okay, give me the point totals one more time.
8,877.
All right, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give Hunter 1 point because he's got good taste and I like his style.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna keep the rest of the points for myself.
All right.
Okay.
I was going to, if I felt like you guys had at least actually tried to engage with this movie, I was going to give you all my points because I knew you weren't going to like it, but you guys were going to at least actually have tried.
I watched this on 1x speed. I watched this with my full attention. True. I gave it it ruined my whole night. I
don't believe you actually tried to engage with this movie.
I don't want your points. I expected to like this movie. I did not like this movie. I actually went into this movie. We got a great email from Ryan, who wrote specifically to me, who said, I feel you. I avoided Cronenberg because I can't handle body horror. Even excessive body modifications make me queasy. I've shut off 2 over-the-top Japanese horror films halfway through. Cronenberg is actually nothing. You're going to be fine. I gave it a try 2 years ago because I looked up his films and realized I had seen and quite enjoyed 2 of them already. So I think you will probably like this. I wish you the best. So I appreciate that, Ryan. I came into it with an optimism because of Ryan, not because of you guys. But Ryan made me feel better before I watched the movie. And then the whole time I was like, oh, I don't think I'm liking this. I don't want your points, Anthony, but I will not take the disrespect. I gave this my full effort to like it. And I will say, every time I've disliked a movie in the history of Read It and Weep, I have given it a chance. That's probably a lie.
Come on.
3, I have given a full everything since you've been a host of the show, Anthony. I have given my full attention to and given a fair shot.
I am fine with the disrespect and the lack of points. All right, I have 2 minutes. So the Ezra and Alex, last place, 8 points. Hunter, second place, 9 points. Anthony, sole possession with 11 points.
No. Hunter and I were tied at 8. You have 7.
Oh, what? I didn't mind? You sure?
Yeah, so I'm at 9 now.
Yes.
Oh, no, that's what I said. Hunter's definitely a 9.
Yeah.
So Hunter's at 9. You were in last place at 7. I have 8.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Anthony
Ezra,
has
sole possession of last place, 7 points. Alex, 8. Hunter, 9. Anthony, 11. Okay?
Okay. And that brings us to 2 quick orders of business. Anthony, what is your next pick for a movie? Or I guess, are you supposed to say after I pick what we're watching next?
No, I can say it now,
Go ahead and say it now.
because I really would be surprised if you picked this movie. But I'm doing the same criteria before. Movie I've always wanted to see. Movie I've heard very good things. This one, I think, has a much more universal cast, so I'm feeling good about this. But I've always wanted to see this. I've sort of taken your challenge, Alex, of sort of like unduding it up, getting some variety.
If we could watch one movie during this season that passed the Bechdel test, I would be pretty into that.
I mean, we certainly have, but I think so what I'm doing next is I'm doing a movie I've always wanted to see from a filmmaker I'm a little iffy on, but this is supposed to be one of her better movies. So I'm doing Sofia Coppola's 1999 The Virgin Suicide.
Oh, heck yeah.
I've never seen it. I've always heard really good things. I've been on a big Kirsten Dunst kick over the past few
Yeah,
months.
Kirsten Dunst rules.
I really have reevaluated her, and I think she's an incredible actress.
Yeah, she's so good.
And this is supposed to be one of her best roles, so I am excited to see it.
I love it. Good pick. All right. And then last order of business, I am the picker for this week. I'm going to make it super simple. I don't have any jokes. We are traveling via Jeremy Irons to The Lion King. I really like The Lion King. It's got lions in it. It's got kings. I like both. It's got song. It's got the longest song about farting in Disney history. Big fan of The Lion King.
That can't be true. That has to be a longer one at some
Disney
point.
cinematic history. Maybe they did it on one of their Disney Channel things, but as far as fart songs, this one's got one of the best. So we're watching the animated film The Lion King, the original The Lion King, which is from 1994 as well.
Cool.
Year of movies. Yeah. So that's what we're doing. That's what's happening next week. It is purely because I want to watch The Lion King and not because it guarantees Ezra and I scoring a lot of points after this. Cool. So The Lion King, it is. That's what's happening. That's it.
You can't move through Jonathan Taylor Thomas to the rest of Hollywood. I mean, come on. That guy is in everything.
Yeah, we're going to watch a lot of Home Improvement after this. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back again next week. Next week, of course, talking about The Lion King from 1994. We really appreciate all of you listening, and I especially appreciate Ryan reaching out to tell me I was going to be okay, even if I disagreed. And you can send us email, podcast@read-leap.com. Let us know your thoughts on the way the game is being played, on Anthony's runaway success recently, throwing off the averages with scoring so many points on his own, or where we should go from here with any of our picks. Really appreciate it. Podcast@read-leap.com. Also, you can check us out watching this video this video recorded live on youtube.com/Alex Falcone. You can also see the start of my new mini-series, We Live in the Future, and possibly the home of a future mini-series where I ask people about their jobs that are portrayed in movies, including my gynecologist. Thanks for being here, Ezra. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for being here, Hunter.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Alex.
And Anthony Lopez, great chatting with you.
It's great talking to you as always. Sorry for disrespecting you. I know you actually tried. I didn't.
I do try. The point that you have to understand is that the thing that is broken in me is like a couple levels deeper than it seems. That's the important thing. It's not up here. It's not like, wouldn't it be funny to hate this? It's always like, wait, why am I like this? All right. Anyway, we'll talk to you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.